Own Way, the podcast, with me, your host, Kori McClurg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back again to Get Out of Your Own Way podcast. I'm Kori McClurg. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about a book that I wrote. It's called Get Out of Your Own Way, a scientific approach to un-F your brain, fix your body, and unleash your power. So, I thought it might be nice for you to get a little insight into the book before you go off and buy it. So I guess probably the first question that people always ask me is, why did I write this book? And so essentially, there's lots of reasons. Like, the first one probably being that I could just see that what had happened to me was happening all around me. People that I know, personal connections, as well as just people from afar. I could see that, people are sick. They are sick and tired of being sick. And when I say sick, maybe they are, they've got heart disease and diabetes, or maybe, they're just overweight and they are just sick with the anxiety around that. Just feeling like a failure, having tried every diet. And so I really, recognizing that I had done, for 10 plus years, I've really steeped myself in nutrition and the science of nutrition, but for so long I couldn't implement it. I mean, I knew what things were bad for me. I knew what things were hurting me, and I just couldn't make it stick. I mean, I would go sometimes even months, doing well, losing some weight and, feeling healthier. But then it all come back. And I just, it just mystified me. And mostly, not only did it mystify me, but I just felt so broken. Like there's something distinctly wrong with me, why I can't do this. So finally I learned the important parts about our brains and how our mind works. And I finally put it all together. I was finally able to implement these changes, and in a way that didn't feel like deprivation. It didn't feel painful. It just felt like, gee, of course this is what I would do. Why would I do things that hurt me? It doesn't make any sense. So once I got all that together, I just felt like, geez, there are so many people that are suffering. And if there's anything I can do to like shortcut your way to wellness, then I'm going to do that. Of course I'm going to do that. Why would I not like compound all these years of my work and my own pain and suffering to help somebody else conquer this, in such a shorter period of time? I really, it really boiled down to this. I kind of have this thesis that all of us have something, a little flame kind of burning inside of us. And it's our bigger vision. It's our grander plans. It's our passion. It's our reason for being. And what I see happening is that people spend so much time and effort on their health that little tiny flame just stays a tiny flame, and sometimes it even kind of gets put out. People give up. They just say, forget it. It's never going to work out for me. I'm never going to get this right. they've just got so many mental cycles working on, just kind of staying alive. But my thesis is that once you can remove that impediment, once you've got your health taken care of via your brain and your body, then it's kind of Katie bar the door, right? Like you can unleash your power on the world. That little flame, you should be able to just use that to, set the world on fire with what you have to offer the world. And I truly believe that, that we all have that. We all have this like unique, this unique thing to give the rest of the world. And I feel like there is no other time where it is so important for that to happen, for all of you to bring your unique ability to bear in changing this world for the better. So, yeah, that was, this, my experience coupled with what I believe. And I think I was even more emboldened in my belief about what people have to offer when I realized how to make it happen. So yeah, so I figured, look, the best way to compile this and give this to people would be, of course, to write a book first. And so yeah, I try to make it as concise as possible. It's organized into those components that I was talking about. So it's your brain, your body, and your power in these three big sections of the book. And the other underlying thing in the book is that I don't want you to believe me, right? I'm not anything special. I didn't invent anything here. All I did was bring a bunch of components together and applied it perhaps in a way that's not been applied before, but that they're really all elements of some basic science. And you should either be able to, go verify that science with the research that's cited, or you can just try it out for yourself. Every single thing that I say in the book has not been like in a part of a peer reviewed study. But it's something that you can just try for yourself. There's no risk in you, trying it. So you can, conduct your own experiment with an N of 1 and verify, that it works. So yeah, I'm not, that was another key element that was important to me. I'm not trying to sell, any ideas that are, the prototypical, snake oil, right? Like, I just want to bring like as much information as I can together in a concise way, in a way that I applied it to myself, and that I think in a methodical way that you can apply to yourself. So, with that, the book's got over 300 citations. I think we're maybe close to 330, something like that. So that was the idea, that, you can verify it for yourself. I'm not just making stuff up, and hoping that is helpful to people. So I thought I'd give you a little bit of kind of a rundown of the first part of the book, the brain part, and then in a couple other, in the next upcoming podcast, I'll give you, each a breakdown of the rest of the book's part of the book's phase 2 and phase 3. So today we'll talk about phase 1, which is brain. And some of this, if you've watched my other podcast or listened to my other podcast, some of this won't be new. You'll have gotten some exposure to it. But The first insight is like willpower doesn't work. I think we all recognize that. I think the problem we have is that we think that we are failing in willpower, that there's something wrong with us, that we just need to conjure more willpower to achieve our goals, and that's absolutely not true. You have plenty of willpower. That's not what this is about. I will say the one application of willpower that I think is helpful, it's not about using willpower to change your behavior. It is about using willpower just to understand yourself. So, to really be aware of your thoughts, your feelings, what's going on in your body. That's when you want to use willpower, because some of us have been so divorced from feeling anything that sometimes it is going to take a little bit of willpower to kind of force us to into starting to understand ourselves. So you're not going to willpower your way through recovering your health. What you can use a little bit of willpower is to start to understand yourself. Another element that's so important in the brain component is to understand that beating yourself up, shaming yourself, also does not work. I know that so many people in the just so many of us individuals feel like we can't let ourselves off the hook, right? That that some kind of discipline is required if we are to achieve our goals, and discipline being kind of giving ourselves some kind of dressing down or talking to if we act in a way that's not in accordance with our goals. But again, that is actually verifiable via research that that shame is an ineffective tool. So don't go down that path. It's not effective. What is helpful is just to recognize that we are going to screw up, and we're humans, and that's just the nature of this beast of being human. That and giving yourself some compassion when that happens, right? It's just an opportunity to learn, and there's nothing wrong with you when you screw something up. And kind of coupled with that, with the idea that, hey, we're just human, is this idea that emotions are not kind of this woo-woo thing. Emotions are actually grounded in science. I trust me, I was 10 years ago, and really through my whole life, until the last few years, I would have said that people that are in touch with their emotions was a big turnoff. That was not something I was comfortable with at all, and it just seemed like a frivolous endeavor to talk about emotion or want to understand it more. But that is on my part an incredibly ignorant frame of mind. So emotions are the way in which this whole species, us as humans, have evolved. So emotion is the way that we learn. It's the way that our brain chemistry, in essence, expresses to us how to stay alive. So, as an example, when you get a hit of dopamine in reaction to something that you've done favorable for your own survival, then you feel that in a certain way. And there's other chemicals like serotonin that you feel in a certain way. It feels good to, do things that inch you closer to, like finding companionship, right? You get a good feeling when you are, you know, like dressing yourself up or something to go on a date. That makes you feel good because you have this drive to seek community with others, to find companionship for the survival of the species. So these emotions that we experience are not a newly manufactured thing that came around in the 60s or something. Emotion is a part of humanity, and so we're not going to get around that. There's nothing special about us to that infers that we can be this android like being and not deal with emotion. That is a fallacy. So the way to combat that is to just start noticing how you feel, right? To, without judgment, accept your humanity and just start noticing it. That's so often we are just numb to what's happening in our brains and in our bodies that we totally miss out on what's driving our behavior, and hence why we're not meeting our goals. So once we start noticing how we feel, we do need to accept the fact that the modern environment is really an unfair fight against our brains. So our brain evolved in over a couple million years in an environment of scarcity. It was a struggle to keep humanity alive. We have never in all of humanity experienced the environment that we are experiencing now. And when I say environment, I mean the sheer abundance, of food, the abundance of highly processed food, the abundance of alcohol, of drugs, of social media, of pornography, of gambling, all these things that, when they are taken back to their, their sort of core and nascent state, that there's a reason why we get a dopamine hit from them. Food, there's a reason we get a dopamine hit from food, so that we are driven to eat more food. However, in this modern environment, the food, quote unquote, is really more like drugs, and it's not, and it doesn't have the nutrient density as food would have had 5,000, 10,000 years ago. So it's not a fair fight. And you should just accept that there's nothing wrong with you, and that your brain is doing what it evolved to do, and that it is being hijacked in this modern environment. If you just go to the grocery store and sort of just kind of take an objective look at it, right? The whole natural foods is the produce aisle. Maybe some dried goods like beans and grains. Other than that, the rest of that crap is not. That is processed food, or processed, food, quote unquote. If you pick up a package and there's any more than like 2 or 3 ingredients, that's a highly processed food. So, a highly processed drug. So you can just see, just walking into the grocery store, and you get a sense of how overwhelming it is of the modern environment against your brain. Another concept I talk about in the book is understanding that you are not your thoughts. So just because you have a thought about something, that doesn't mean that's you. You don't have to identify with it, right? Like if you sit and kind of watch your thoughts for a few minutes just randomly, and you notice there's like all kinds of like negative talking, there's judging, there's whatever, you don't have to accept that. That is not, you don't have to own that, right? You can create separation between you and your thoughts. And the key there is that we just want to be an observer of them. Because when we stop trying to own them, then we can separate ourselves from them, not take things so personally. Part of these thoughts is understanding liminal thinking, which I've talked about in another podcast. Liminal thinking are those like just under the surface thoughts that oftentimes we're not even really aware of them. It's usually we get a sense of them in reaction to something. We kind of have an immediate feeling about something, and that's like a liminal thought at work. So understanding that you have all of these kind of liminal thoughts working that you can't quite articulate, but they are what are driving your behavior. And once you can start to kind of ferret that stuff out, the closer you will be to understanding what's driving you to, to not achieve your goals, to be disappointed in what you've consciously decided that you want for your life, but for some reason you're not able to achieve it. So part and parcel to this liminal thinking is this idea of cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance being that we might act in a way that is counter to what our stated value is. So for example, if I say that health and longevity are my values, but then, I go eat a cheeseburger, I'm going to feel this cognitive dissonance, which is this kind of uncomfortable feeling, because I've got these two things going on that are obviously not in alignment. And what happens is when we experience cognitive dissonance is that our brain will take action to resolve that cognitive dissonance before we're really even aware of it. And this is where these liminal thoughts kind of come in. So you're trying to resolve, not consciously, but your brain's trying to resolve this cognitive dissonance and likely using, some liminal thinking to help resolve that. So it'll look like you'll eat the cheeseburger, but then you kind of decide that, I should have cheat days. That's healthier to have cheat days, right? Even though before you did it, you didn't have a cheat day strategy. By the way, I don't recommend a cheat day strategy, but that's a whole different story. So there's a lot going on kind of in our subconscious, and the more that we can understand that, the better armed we are to deal with the modern environment and to just make this fundamental mindset shift so that you're not battling it all the time. Once you understand that and start ferreting out when that's happening, it'll actually be quite easy to make this shift, and you don't have to fight with yourself around just doing what's in alignment with your own values. So a couple of things to understand about that. One is, you have to be ready, right, for change. And there's some kind of ideas that I talk about in the book about how to know if you're ready for change. Like you have to know that you can. You have to know that you are the one to make the change. It's not, you can't be waiting on your spouse to make changes so that you can make changes. And you really have to feel like, now's the time to do it. So, and when you feel like, you're there and you have this readiness, then the really the the most effective way, the really the key to changing is an idea called emotion-based goals. So instead of saying that, hey, I have this goal to lose weight, that's a behavior-based goal. In fact, that's a result of a behavior-based goal. What's really more effective is thinking about how you want to feel about that thing. You know, if food or alcohol is the substance involved, then an emotion-based goal would be something like, I just don't want to worry about it. It's like, it's small and irrelevant in my life. It's not a big deal. So, and the reason why that's so important is because we do everything based on how we feel about it. Everything. There's nothing in our lives that we do that is sheerly this like cut and dry logical decision. It's all, we do everything based on how we feel about it. So until we decide until we realize that we have to change how we feel about the thing, it's not going to happen for very long. What we want to get to is this idea of unconscious competence. So there's this idea of 4 stages of learning a skill in particular. And the idea is that you go through these 4 stages until finally you get to unconscious competence. Now, for some reason, I can't quite put my finger on it, but when it comes to, diet and other health related habits, we all kind of, we stop at conscious competence. And so let me run through this. Sorry. There's unconscious incompetence. So you don't even know that there's a problem, so why would you even look at fixing it? Conscious incompetence is, there's a problem, but you really don't know how to fix it. This is a really painful and part of the development. This is where, most of us live for a long period of time. We know we need to lose weight. We know we need to deal with our diabetes. We know we have heart disease, and we want to fix it, but we've tried and failed numerous times to do that. So it's a painful part. Then we finally, we may get to conscious competence where we learn how to fix the problem, but we have to think about doing it all the time. This stage is really exhausting because it's always on your mind. It's all, one of the, maybe one of the biggest models for conscious competence would be like Alcoholics Anonymous. You're always going to meetings. You're always, in contact with your sponsor. People stop drinking for years and years. But it's almost like if there's not this constant diligence and mindfulness about it, somebody will fall off the wagon at any moment. There's significant mental effort. But the 4th stage of learning a skill is unconscious competence. So you consistently exercise that new skill without even thinking about it. It's just like who you are. I mean, it's like walking, right? I mean, we all had to learn how to walk, but nobody thinks about it anymore. I mean, driving, we all drive around. I mean, hell, sometimes we get places and we don't even remember how we got there, right? Because we were just on autopilot. So that's really the desirable state, is this unconscious competence. And this is where, when we see somebody who has really figured something out and it just seems effortless, they've gotten to this stage. So, and then a few other ideas that I go over in the book are things to help you get going down this path. So like, laying down your sword, stop trying to stop. So when you keep trying to force yourself into some behavior and you're failing at it, then you're trapped in this shame cycle. You're trying to do the behavior, and you fail at it because you have all these liminal beliefs about it, and then um, that upsets you. And so, how do you deal with being upset? Well, you usually go back to your drug of choice to deal with those feelings. So, if we can just stop trying to stop, just say, you know what, I'm not going to try to change my behavior anymore. I'm just going to start becoming more aware of what's going on around it. That's the first key step. Once the angst and anxiety starts dropping away, then some actual rational information can start entering your brain. Until then, it's going to be this constant battle in your brain. So stop trying to stop is a key step in starting the change. And then just, like I was saying with this awareness, recognizing where we've got these liminal thoughts, particularly around like limitations. We have so many limiting beliefs swirling around in our brains about, it's everything from what we think we're good at to who we think we are, or what other people might think about who we are, or whatever. It's and those limiting beliefs really are just BS. I mean, once you really dig into it, you can start to understand that they're nothing. They're not you. They came from somewhere else because you're not your thoughts. So, and then I do actually go into some ideas around how to start changing those limiting beliefs. I know we've all heard like, just be positive, and I think we kind of get energized by some of that in the moment, but then realize that that's kind of BS. Like you're not going to convince yourself that if you've had some negativity around something, you're not going to convince yourself in the very next moment that, oh no, really everything's positive. That's not going to happen. That's toxic positivity. And not only is it not helpful, I'd say it's counterproductive, because then you can't even believe, yourself. So, there's a couple of techniques called the ACT technique and the work, and I have another podcast about them. So go back and listen to those about how to specifically employ those techniques, and it's there in the book. And then, once you can kind of start getting some of this angst and anxiety pulled away, walking through all of these steps and understanding what's going on in your brain, then you can start trying some abstinence around, one or two things, whether with your diet or alcohol or whatever it is. You start trying out what it feels like to not have that. And what that does is start to calm your brain, calm some of those chemicals in your brain. And then some more information can really start getting in, because the more abstinence you're able to get, some of the physiological stuff that happens, cravings and whatnot, that starts to fade away. So then you can truly make some real educated decisions about what that thing means to you or doesn't mean to you. Until you get some abstinence with it, you won't really know. So we talk about that, about how to do that. Yes, absolutely. You're going to have some physiological cravings, potentially some psychological. And I talk about in the book how to, withstand those short periods. Cravings don't really last that long. It's a very short period of time. And so there's just a few tactics to employ to just kind of get through those moments. And then I'd say the last thing that is so important in this brain part of our journey is to celebrate wins. I remember this being so hard for me because I just thought, well, I should have already been doing this, this is, you know, like a, like I, like I was rewarding myself for getting through a remedial class or something. And, and so, but the thought process there is so ignorant in that, we are where we are. We, there, through no fault of our own, we are where we are. This is not something that we, did. We didn't, we had no choice in being born in this environment. So accepting where we are, and then each little step of the way, when we do something, we notice that we're feeling a different way about these things that are destructive in our lives, and we are, or we're having some better health outcomes. Like every little step, we want to celebrate that. Any day that we went through and we didn't obsess about stopping at the liquor store, or we didn't obsess about, eating ice cream or whatever. Like, don't be stingy, right? With celebrating your wins. Like, that's what you want to reinforce. You want to reinforce the positive feelings that you get, by these subtle things happening. So don't overlook that. It's really, really, really important to celebrate wins. So that's a quick and dirty rundown of like everything that we cover in the book. And, I, of course, go into much greater depth in the book to really, so you can understand the science, so that you can understand how to employ it in your own life for each one of these bits of information. It's set up such that you get a little bit of insight, the kind of education, and then there's a tactic that's paired with that. So you know how exactly to employ that in your own life, why that information is useful, what you can use it for. So yeah, that's the first phase of the book, and we will get into the other phases here in the next couple weeks.